I still remember that Friday afternoon like it was frozen in time. The office was quieter than usual. Most people were wrapping up their weekly reports, the soft hum of computers blending with the faint sound of traffic outside our glass building. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, casting golden reflections across the polished floor. I was sitting at my desk, trying to focus on numbers and emails, but honestly, my mind was already on the evening ahead. I had a date. It wasn't anything too serious. Just dinner with someone I had met through a mutual friend. Her name was Sarah. She seemed sweet, funny, and easy to talk to. I figured, why not? I checked the time on my phone. 4:17 p.m. 43 minutes left before freedom. That's when I heard the soft but confident click of heels approaching my office door. I didn't need to look up to know who it was. Miss Elena Carter. My boss. She had a presence that filled any room before she even spoke. Calm. Controlled. Elegant. The kind of woman who didn't raise her voice because she never needed to. A gentle knock touched my half-open door. "Do you have a minute?" she asked. Her voice was smooth, professional, but warm. "Of course," I said, quickly straightening in my chair. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. That was unusual. She rarely closed doors unless the conversation mattered. She was wearing a deep red fitted dress that afternoon. Simple. Powerful. Confident. The sunlight from the window caught the subtle shine in her hair, and for a second, I forgot whatever report I had been working on. She walked toward my desk, holding a thin folder in one hand. "I reviewed your proposal," she said. "Impressive work." "Thank you," I replied, trying not to sound too eager. She placed the folder on my desk but didn't step away. Instead, she leaned lightly against the edge of it. "So," she said casually, tilting her head slightly, "big plans tonight?" The question caught me off guard. Actually, yes," I admitted with a small smile. "I have a date." The moment the words left my mouth, something shifted. It was subtle. Almost invisible. But I saw it. Her smile stayed, yet her eyes changed. "Oh," she said softly. There was a pause. Just long enough to make my heartbeat slightly louder. "And is she prettier than I am?" For a second, I thought I misheard her. My brain struggled to process the sentence. Did she really just ask that? My boss. The woman who ran an entire department with flawless authority. Was she teasing me? I laughed nervously. That's not a fair comparison. She raised an eyebrow, a playful spark flickering in her eyes. "I didn't ask about fairness," she replied. The air between us felt different now. Not inappropriate. Not uncomfortable. Just charged. I swallowed. "She's different," I said carefully. Elena crossed her arms loosely, studying me. "Different how?" I shifted slightly in my chair. "She's kind. Easygoing. Beautiful in her own way." "In her own way," she repeated thoughtfully. Then she stepped closer. Not too close. Just enough that I could smell her perfume, light, elegant, something floral but not overwhelming. "And what's my way?" she asked quietly. My heart skipped. Her tone wasn't demanding. It was curious. Almost vulnerable. I stood up slowly, suddenly feeling like sitting made me look smaller. "You're confident," I said honestly. "Intelligent. You walk into a room and everyone notices." She held my gaze. "And," she pressed. "And," I hesitated, choosing my words carefully, "you're hard to ignore." For a split second, something softer replaced her usual executive expression. But then she straightened, stepping back slightly. "That's a dangerous compliment," she said lightly. I smiled. "I didn't mean it that way." "Didn't you?" The question lingered. Silence filled the room again, not awkward, but meaningful. Then she glanced toward the window before looking back at me. "Well," she said more professionally now, "I hope your date appreciates how attentive you can be." There was something in that sentence. Something layered. "I'm sure she will," I replied. But even as I said it, I wasn't completely sure. She turned toward the door, her heels clicking softly against the floor. Just before opening it, she paused. Without looking at me, she spoke again. Don't fall too hard. Then she stepped out, closing the door gently behind her. I stood there for several seconds, staring at the spot where she had been. What just happened? Was she joking? Was she testing me? Or was that something else entirely? I sat back down slowly, trying to refocus on work, but it was useless. My mind replayed her question over and over. Is she prettier than I am? It wasn't just about beauty. It was the way she asked. Calm on the outside. Curious underneath. Almost uncertain. And that didn't match the image of the fearless boss I knew. For the first time, I wondered if there was a side of her I had never seen. A personal side. A woman behind the authority. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. Emails were answered. Documents were signed. Colleagues said their goodbyes. At exactly 5:02 p.m., I shut down my computer. As I grabbed my jacket, I glanced toward her office across the floor. The blinds were half open. She was inside, sitting at her desk, focused on her screen. Professional. Composed. Untouchable. For a second, our eyes met through the glass. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. But she didn't look away either. I gave a small nod. She responded with the slightest tilt of her head. Then I walked toward the elevator. As the doors closed, I exhaled slowly. I was going on a date. A normal, simple dinner. So why did it feel like something important had just begun? In the elevator mirror, I adjusted my collar. I should have been thinking about Sarah. About what to say. About how the night might go. Instead, all I could hear was her voice. Soft. Confident. Curious. Is she prettier than I am? By the time I stepped outside into the cool evening air, I realized something unsettling. It wasn't just a playful question. It was a spark. And whether I admitted it or not, something had shifted between us. Something that couldn't easily go back to normal. And as I headed toward my car, one thought refused to leave my mind. Maybe tonight's date wasn't the beginning of something new. Maybe it was the realization of what had been standing in front of me all along. And maybe, just maybe, my boss wasn't asking about beauty. Maybe she was asking about us. Yellowheart. The restaurant was exactly what I expected. Soft golden lighting. Low instrumental music playing in the background. Couples seated at neatly arranged tables, laughing quietly over glasses of wine. It was the kind of place where first impressions mattered. I checked my reflection in the window before stepping inside. Calm down, I told myself. It's just dinner. Sarah was already there when I arrived. She stood up as soon as she saw me, smiling warmly. Hey, I'm glad you made it, she said. Of course, I replied, returning her smile. She looked beautiful, simple navy blue dress, natural makeup, effortless charm. Any other night, I would have been completely focused on her. But tonight, something was off. We sat down, ordered drinks, and began the usual first date conversation. Work. Hobbies. Favorite travel destinations. She laughed at my jokes. I listened carefully to her stories. On paper, everything was going perfectly. So why did my mind keep drifting back to the office? Back to that moment. Back to her voice. Is she prettier than I am? I shook the thought away, forcing myself to focus. Sarah was talking about her recent trip to California. And the sunset over the ocean was unreal, she said excitedly. That sounds amazing, I replied. But my voice felt distant, like I was only half present. She tilted her head slightly. You okay? Yeah, I said quickly. Long week at work. That wasn't entirely a lie. But it wasn't the whole truth either. The waiter brought our food, and for a few minutes, we focused on eating. The atmosphere was warm, comfortable. She reached across the table once, lightly touching my hand while laughing at something I said. And I felt nothing. Not dislike. Not discomfort. Just neutrality. And that scared me. Because I should have felt something. I excused myself to the restroom halfway through dinner. As I stood in front of the mirror, washing my hands slowly, I stared at my own reflection. What's wrong with you? Sarah was kind. Beautiful. Easy to talk to. Then why couldn't I stop comparing this evening to a single look from Elena? A single question. The truth began forming quietly in my mind. It wasn't about who was prettier. It was about who made my heart react without trying. With Elena, it was effortless. A look. A pause. A slight change in her tone. And suddenly the air felt charged. With Sarah, everything felt structured. Safe. Predictable. I dried my hands and took a deep breath. Maybe I just needed to give it more time. I walked back to the table. She smiled as I sat down. Everything okay? Yeah, I nodded. But she was observant. You seem distracted, she said gently. Is it work? I hesitated. Part of me wanted to brush it off. But another part knew she deserved honesty. There's just someone at work, I admitted slowly. Her smile faded slightly. Someone? It's complicated. She leaned back in her chair. Complicated usually means feelings. Her words hit harder than I expected. I stared down at the table for a moment before meeting her eyes again. I didn't realize it until tonight. She studied me carefully. Is she the reason you look like you're somewhere else? She asked softly. I didn't answer immediately. And that was answer enough. Sarah sighed, but she didn't look angry. Just understanding. You should be thinking about the person sitting in front of you, she said kindly. Not someone who isn't here. Guilt settled in my chest. You're right, I said. I'm sorry. She gave a small, bittersweet smile. It's okay. I'd rather know now than later. The maturity in her response made me respect her even more. We finished dinner politely, conversation lighter but less personal. The spark that might have existed earlier was gone. Outside the restaurant, the night air felt cool against my skin. I walked her to her car. She turned to face me before getting in. Whoever she is, Sarah said softly, I hope she knows how lucky she is. I swallowed. Thank you, I replied. She gave me a brief hug, friendly, not romantic, then got into her car and drove away. And just like that, the date was over. I stood there for a moment, hands in my pockets, staring at the empty parking space. I should have felt disappointed. Instead, I felt clarity. As I walked to my own car, my phone buzzed in my pocket. My heart jumped slightly before I even looked at the screen. Elena. The message was simple. How's the date? I stared at the words. Was she genuinely curious? Or was she waiting for something? I typed back carefully. It's interesting. 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Oh, she replied. I leaned against my car before answering again. I keep thinking about something you said. A few seconds passed. And what was that? She wrote. I hesitated. This was the moment. The turning point. The question you asked me, I typed. About whether she was prettier. The typing dots appeared again. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally, her message came through. And I exhaled slowly and decided to be honest. It wasn't about prettier, I wrote. It was about who makes me feel something. This time, the pause was longer. Long enough for my heartbeat to grow louder. Then my phone buzzed again. And who makes you feel something? I didn't overthink it. I didn't rewrite the sentence. I just sent it. You. The message delivered. No turning back. Seconds passed. No response. Maybe I had crossed a line. Maybe I had misunderstood everything. I got into my car, placing the phone on the passenger seat, trying to act like I didn't care. But I cared. More than I wanted to admit. Just as I started the engine, my phone buzzed again. I grabbed it quickly. Her message was short. Drive safe. That was it. No denial. No correction. No reminder about professionalism. Just, drive safe. And somehow, those 2 words meant everything. Because if she didn't feel it too, she would have drawn a boundary. She would have shut it down. Instead, she left the door slightly open. As I drove home under the city lights, one thing became clear. Tonight wasn't a failed date. It was a realization. A quiet understanding that what I was searching for was already part of my life. And maybe tomorrow, Everything between us would change. Or maybe it already had. Monday morning felt different. Nothing in the office had changed, same glass walls, same polished floors, same quiet buzz of productivity, but something inside me had shifted. I barely slept Sunday night. Her last message replayed in my head over and over. Drive safe. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't romantic. But it wasn't distant either. It felt careful. And careful meant she was thinking. Just like I was. I stepped out of the elevator and immediately glanced toward her office. The blinds were open. She was already there. Focused. Composed. Professional as ever. If someone walked in right now, they'd see nothing unusual. But I knew something had changed between us. At least, I hoped it had. I sat at my desk, pretending to review emails, but my attention kept drifting. Around 10:15 a.m., my phone buzzed. It wasn't a text this time. It was a calendar notification. Meeting, 10:30 a.m. Elena Carter. My heart pounded. A scheduled meeting. Private. I swallowed and checked the location. Her office. Of course. The next 15 minutes felt longer than the entire weekend. I rehearsed conversations in my head. Maybe she'd say it was a mistake. Maybe she'd remind me of boundaries. Maybe she'd pretend the text never happened. At exactly 10:30, I stood outside her door and knocked softly. Come in, her voice called out, calm, steady. I opened the door and stepped inside. She was standing by the window again, just like Friday. But today she wore a deep purple fitted dress, elegant and powerful. Sunlight framed her silhouette, making the moment feel almost cinematic. She didn't smile immediately. Instead, she studied me. Close the door, she said gently. I did. The soft click echoed louder than usual. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she walked toward her desk and leaned lightly against it, crossing her arms. I read your message, she said. My throat felt dry. I figured. Her expression was unreadable. Do you understand the position you've put me in? She asked. There it was. Reality. Yes, I replied honestly. And I'm not expecting anything. She tilted her head slightly. Not expecting anything? I just didn't want to lie, I said. Not to you. Not to myself. Her eyes softened for a split second before she looked away toward the window. You're brave, she said quietly. I don't feel brave. She looked back at me. Most people hide feelings when they're inconvenient. I took a step closer, not invading her space, just closing the distance enough to show I wasn't retreating. I don't want to hide this, I said. Silence filled the room again. But this silence wasn't uncertain. It was heavy with truth. She uncrossed her arms slowly. When I asked you about your date, she began, her voice softer now. I wasn't joking. My heartbeat quickened. I know, I said gently. She exhaled slowly, as if releasing something she had been holding in for days. I didn't like the idea of you sitting across from someone else, she admitted. I didn't like imagining her making you laugh. Her honesty stunned me. You were jealous, I said quietly. She gave a small, almost shy smile. I don't get jealous. You did. She stepped closer now. Close enough that the professional distance between boss and employee felt thinner. I've worked very hard to build control in my life, she said. Control over my company. My decisions. My emotions. And? I asked softly. And you make that control difficult. The air between us shifted again. This wasn't playful teasing anymore. This was real. I never meant to complicate your life, I said. You didn't, she replied quickly. Feelings aren't complications. They're risks. I searched her eyes. Is this a risk you regret? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached out slowly and adjusted the collar of my shirt. The gesture was small. Intimate. Deliberate. No, she whispered. The word landed softly but carried weight. My breath caught. Elena, I began. Her name felt different on my lips now. More personal. She noticed. Her eyes flickered slightly at the sound of it. You shouldn't say my name like that in the office, she said quietly. Like what? Like it belongs to you. My heart pounded harder. Maybe it does, I replied before I could stop myself. For a second, I thought I had gone too far. But instead of pulling away, she stepped even closer. There's a line here, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. A line between professional and personal. I nodded. I know. And once we cross it, she continued, we can't pretend it doesn't exist. I don't want to pretend. Her hand was still near my collar. I gently placed my hand over hers. Warm. Soft. Real. She didn't pull away. The contact sent a quiet electricity through me. Tell me something, she said softly. Anything. If I weren't your boss, would you still want this? There was no hesitation this time. Yes. Her eyes searched mine, looking for doubt. She found none. And if this becomes complicated, she asked. Then we face it together. The word together seemed to settle something inside her. For the first time since I walked in, she smiled fully. Not the confident CEO smile. Not the controlled executive expression. But something genuine. Human. You have no idea what you're stepping into, she said lightly. Maybe not, I admitted. But I know how I feel. She studied me one last time. Then slowly, carefully, she removed her hand from my collar. But instead of creating distance, she let her fingers trail gently down my wrist before letting go. The smallest touch. Yet it meant everything. We can't rush this, she said. Not here. I understand. She walked back toward her desk, reclaiming a bit of professional posture. But, she added, glancing at me over her shoulder, that doesn't mean we ignore it. Hope sparked in my chest. What are you saying? I asked. She picked up a file from her desk, pretending to review it. I'm saying, she replied calmly, that if you're still brave enough, we continue this conversation outside the office. My pulse quickened. Outside? She looked up at me, one eyebrow slightly raised. Dinner. Friday. No work talk. A slow smile spread across my face. Are you asking me out? She walked toward the door and opened it slightly, signaling the meeting was ending. I believe you were the one who said you were on the wrong date, she said smoothly. I stepped toward the door but paused in front of her. So this is the right one? I asked quietly. She held my gaze, steady, confident, but with warmth underneath. We'll see, she replied. As I stepped back into the hallway, my heart felt lighter. Nothing dramatic had happened. No grand gestures. No reckless decisions. Just honesty. And possibility. For the rest of the day, we were completely professional. Meetings. Emails. Strategic discussions. If anyone watched us, they'd see nothing unusual. But every time our eyes met across the room, there was understanding. Anticipation. A silent agreement. Friday wasn't just dinner. It was the moment we would decide whether this spark was temporary, or the beginning of something neither of us could control. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of crossing the line. Because maybe, some lines are meant to be crossed. Friday arrived slower than any day I could remember. All week, we had been careful, professional, measured. If anyone in the office suspected something, they didn't show it. Meetings continued as usual. Emails were precise. Conversations were structured. But beneath that professionalism, something warm and electric flowed quietly between us. Every glance lasted half a second longer than necessary. Every subtle smile carried hidden meaning. And now, it was Friday evening. The elevator doors opened to the rooftop restaurant she had chosen. The city stretched endlessly below, golden lights beginning to glow as the sun dipped toward the horizon. The sky was painted in shades of soft orange, pink, and deep blue. It felt unreal. I spotted her standing near the railing. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. She was wearing a long black elegant dress, simple but breathtaking. Her hair moved gently in the evening breeze. Without the structured walls of the office around her, she looked different. Lighter. More relaxed. More. Elena. She turned as if she sensed me watching. And she smiled. Not the CEO smile. Not the composed executive expression. A real one. "You're on time," she said softly as I approached. "I didn't want to keep you waiting," I replied. "You don't strike me as someone who would." There was no tension tonight. No uncertainty about rules. Just two people standing above a glowing city, deciding what came next. We were seated at a private table near the edge of the rooftop. Soft string lights hung above us, casting a warm glow over everything. For a few minutes, we talked casually. Work was intentionally avoided. Instead, she asked about my childhood. My family. The things that shaped me. I realized something surprising. She was listening not as a boss evaluating an employee, but as a woman genuinely wanting to know me. "You're different outside the office," I said gently. She raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" "Softer," I admitted. "More open." She considered that. "I have to be strong at work," she said. "People rely on that version of me. And who relies on this version?" I asked quietly. Her eyes held mine across the table. "I'm not sure yet," she replied. Dinner arrived, but neither of us paid much attention to the food. The conversation flowed naturally: dreams, travel, fears, things we rarely admit out loud. At one point, she laughed a full, unguarded laugh. It caught me off guard. "I've never heard you laugh like that," I said. "That's because you only see the boardroom version of me," she teased. "I prefer this one." The compliment lingered between us. As the sky darkened completely, city lights shimmered around us like scattered stars. A gentle breeze brushed across the rooftop. She reached for her glass but paused halfway. "Can I ask you something honest?" she said. "Always." "When you sent that message, telling me I was the one who made you feel something," she hesitated slightly, "were you afraid?" I thought about it. "Yes," I admitted. "Of what?" "Losing my job. Losing your respect. Losing whatever this could be." Her expression softened deeply at that. "I would never punish honesty," she said quietly. "I know that now." She studied me carefully. "And if this doesn't work?" she asked. "Then at least we didn't wonder what if for the rest of our lives." That answer seemed to reach her in a way nothing else had. She slowly extended her hand across the table. Not dramatic. Not rushed. Just intentional. I placed my hand in hers. Warm. Steady. Her fingers intertwined with mine naturally, as if they had always belonged there. "This is new territory for me," she admitted softly. "For me too. I don't mix work and personal life." "Neither do I," I smiled. And yet here we are." We both laughed quietly. After dinner, we walked toward the railing overlooking the city. The skyline sparkled beneath us. Cars moved like tiny streams of light below. She stood beside me, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "when you told me you had a date, I felt something I didn't expect." "Jealousy?" I teased gently. She glanced at me with a playful warning look. "Yes," she admitted. "But not just that." "What else?" "Fear." That surprised me. Fear of what? That I had waited too long. The vulnerability in her voice changed everything. "You didn't," I said firmly. "How do you know?" "Because I'm here." She turned to face me fully now. The city lights reflected softly in her eyes. "And if you hadn't sent that message," she asked, "I would have regretted it." Silence wrapped around us again, but this time it felt safe. Intentional. She stepped slightly closer. Close enough that I could feel the warmth from her skin in the cool night air. "Tell me something," she said softly. "Anything. Are you still thinking about your date from last week?" I smiled. "There was no date." She tilted her head slightly. "There was dinner," I clarified. "But no connection." "And with me?" she asked quietly. My heart beat slower now, steady, confident. "With you, it feels effortless." Her breath caught just slightly. That was all the encouragement I needed. I gently reached up and brushed a strand of hair away from her face. I moved slowly, giving her time to pull back if she wanted to. She didn't. Her eyes lowered briefly to my lips, then back to my eyes. "There's still a line," she whispered. I know. And once we cross it, we don't look back, I finished softly. She searched my face one last time. Maybe for doubt. Maybe for hesitation. She found neither. So she closed the distance herself. The kiss wasn't rushed. It wasn't dramatic. It was soft. Careful. Exploratory. But it carried weeks of unspoken tension. Her hand rested gently against my chest. Mine settled at her waist. The world around us seemed to quiet. When we finally pulled apart, she didn't step away. Instead, her forehead rested lightly against mine. That, she whispered, was not professional. I laughed softly. Good thing we're off the clock. She smiled, that real smile again. The one that made all the risk worth it. We stayed there for a few more minutes, standing close, letting the moment settle naturally instead of rushing it. Eventually, she stepped back slightly but kept her hand in mine. We move slowly, she said. Slow is good, I agreed. No secrets from each other. Never. And if this starts affecting work, we handle it together. She nodded, satisfied. As we walked toward the elevator, I realized something important. This wasn't just attraction. It wasn't impulsive. It wasn't reckless. It was intentional. Mature. Balanced. When the elevator doors closed and we descended together, she looked at me softly. You know, she said, I'm glad she wasn't prettier. I smiled. She never stood a chance. She laughed quietly and leaned her head lightly against my shoulder for just a second before straightening again. When the doors opened to the lobby, we stepped out side by side. Still careful. Still composed. But no longer wondering. Because tonight wasn't about crossing a line. It was about choosing each other. And for the first time, it felt completely right. It's strange how one simple question can change everything. Is she prettier than I am? At the time, it felt playful. Teasing. Unexpected. But now, standing months later in the same office where it all began, I realize it was never about beauty. It was about timing. About courage. About two people deciding whether they were willing to risk comfort for something real. The weeks after our rooftop dinner were careful but different. We agreed on boundaries immediately. At work, she was still Miss Carter. Professional. Focused. Unshakable. And I was still her employee. Meetings remained structured. Decisions remained fair. No favoritism. No unnecessary attention. If anything, we became even more disciplined inside the office. But outside those glass walls, everything softened. Our second date was simpler, a quiet coffee shop on a Sunday afternoon. No city skyline. No dramatic lighting. Just conversation. Real conversation. We talked about past relationships, what worked, what didn't. She admitted she had spent years prioritizing her career above everything else. I convinced myself I didn't have time for love, she said once, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. And now? I asked. She looked up at me with a calm certainty. Now I think I was just afraid of choosing the wrong person. That answer stayed with me. Because what we were building didn't feel rushed. It felt intentional. One evening, about a month into dating, we were walking through a quiet park near her apartment. The sun was setting, casting long golden shadows across the grass. She was unusually quiet. What's on your mind? I asked gently. She stopped walking and turned toward me. I've spent years being in control, she said slowly. Control over my image. My company. My decisions. I waited. With you, she continued, I don't feel the need to control anything. There was no fear in her voice. Just honesty. That's a good thing, I said softly. It is, she nodded. But it's also new. I stepped closer. You don't have to be the strong one all the time. She studied my face carefully. And you don't have to impress me, she replied. That was the moment I understood something important. What we had wasn't built on excitement alone. It was built on balance. Support. Respect. 2 months later, the office rumors started. Nothing dramatic, just subtle glances, longer looks when we entered meetings at the same time. We knew it was only a matter of time before someone asked directly. One afternoon, she called me into her office again. But this time, the door stayed slightly open. Symbolic. Transparent. We should address it, she said calmly. I nodded. Together. Together. The following week, we informed HR, professionally, respectfully. We agreed to restructure reporting lines so that I no longer reported directly to her. It was her idea. Not because she doubted us, but because she wanted to protect us. I won't let anyone say you succeeded because of me, she told me firmly. And I won't let anyone say you compromised your standards, I replied. That was the difference between infatuation and something real. We were willing to adjust our lives for it. As months passed, our relationship deepened in quiet ways. She began leaving work earlier sometimes. I learned how she liked her tea, no sugar, just a slice of lemon. She learned that I get quiet when I'm stressed, not distant. We didn't rush into dramatic declarations. We didn't post pictures or make grand announcements. We built something steady. One evening, nearly 6 months after that first rooftop date, we returned to the same restaurant. Same city view. Same soft lights. But this time, there was no tension. No uncertainty. Just familiarity. She wore a soft white dress that moved gently in the breeze. You brought me back here, she said, smiling. Why? I took a slow breath. Because this is where we stopped wondering. Her expression softened. You remember everything, she teased lightly. Only the important things. Dinner passed with laughter and ease. Afterward, we stood at the railing again, overlooking the glowing skyline. She leaned lightly against me, comfortable and unguarded. Do you ever think about that night? She asked quietly. Every time I see this view. She turned slightly to look at me. And if I hadn't asked you that question? I smiled. I would have still found my way to you. She shook her head gently. Confident. Certain, I corrected. There was a pause. Then she said something that caught me completely off guard. I love you. Simple. Clear. No hesitation. For a moment, the world seemed to still. I didn't rush my response. I let the weight of it settle properly. Then I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman who once intimidated me in board meetings. The woman who challenged me. The woman who risked her carefully built control for something uncertain. I love you too, I said. And this time, the kiss we shared wasn't tentative. It wasn't cautious. It was grounded. Certain. A promise rather than a question. Later that night, as we rode the elevator down, she leaned her head lightly against my shoulder again, just like the first time. You know what's funny, she said softly. What? I don't even remember what that girl looked like. I laughed. I barely do either. She tilted her head playfully. So, was she prettier than I am? I pretended to think for a second. Not even close. She smiled, satisfied, but not because of the answer. Satisfied because she knew. It was never about comparison. It was about connection. About two people brave enough to admit what they felt. Back at the office the following Monday, nothing dramatic had changed. Glass walls. Structured meetings. Professional focus. But now, when our eyes met across the conference table, there was no question lingering between us. No uncertainty. Just quiet understanding. And sometimes, when she passed by my desk, she would pause for a fraction of a second longer than necessary. Just enough to remind me of how it all started. One simple question. One unexpected spark. One decision to be honest. And every time I think back to that Friday afternoon, I smile. Because the best relationships don't begin with perfection. They begin with courage. With vulnerability. With someone daring to ask, is she prettier than I am? And someone else brave enough to answer with their heart. Yellow heart.